Hello, I'm going to do a presentation now on the practice tools, what I call the practice tools. And the idea behind this is when you think about how much time we spend in our practice against lesson times, so let's say you have an hour a week for your lesson, how many hours would you be expected to practice in between the lesson to improve, to make corrections, to learn notes, to solve problems? There's quite a lot of hours there that you'd be expected to practice if you were a serious piano student. The problem is, a lot of piano students don't know how to practice, and I've noticed this from my own work, listening to people practicing in outside institutional practice room windows. There's very rarely a plan for practice. So if you've got something wrong with your car, you call out a mechanic to sort it out, and they don't kind of approximately they lift the hood of the car, and they don't say, well, I sort of do this, and I think I do that, and usually it's fixed. They will know exactly what they do. They will know which tools they need to use, they will know which parts they need to take out and replace, or how to fix things. Now the thing is, that's a little bit more scientific, isn't it? Working under a car hood is a little bit more scientific. Piano practice is not quite so scientific, but I think we can label some of the tools that we use, and I'd like to do that now and just show you how you might apply them. So the first practice tool may seem a little bit strange, but it's actually to do with what you do before you come to the piano. So it's know the score before. What does that mean? Well, rather than just opening the book to page 1 of your piece and playing the first chord and then playing the second note and then going through it that way, you take a little time away from the keyboard before you start. And I'm reminded of the Gina Bachauer story, the great Greek pianist who spent 21 days in bed. Well, she didn't spend 21 days in bed, but in the evenings, she would go up to bed with a score of whatever it is she was wanting to learn next, and she would spend 21 days away from the piano, figuring out how the music sounded. She was probably organising the structure of the piece would have been very clear to her, how one theme related to the other, the sort of sound and the kind of character that she wanted. And she would presumably have been visualising how the music looked on her or felt on her air piano. What's an air piano? We all have an air piano. It's in our imagination. We can see a piano keyboard if we close our eyes, and we can see our hand playing on that piano keyboard. We can even, if we're a little bit more experienced, hear the sounds that come out. So this is all work that we can do. An analysis is a seriously important thing to undertake. It does not have to be strictly formal, although it can be. The more you know about music theory, the better. But some sort of analysis that will act as a map of the terrain, any method that makes sense to you, and I'm going to be doing some analysis at some later stage to show you. If you've got a younger player, let's say you're a teacher and you've got a young student who wants to engage in this sort of analysis game, we play a game called Sherlock Holmes, or whoever your favourite detective is. And it's simply this. You take the score, and if you're the teacher, you ask them to come up with 10 observations, 10 things that they see. Now what will usually happen to start with is they'll just point out obvious things. That's a treble clef, or it says loud there. So then if they say it says forte there, that means loud, then run with that and go with the dynamics and ask, what do the dynamics do? Are there any changes of dynamics? Where do they change? Where's the loudest part of this piece? Where's the softest part of this piece? So we just take that idea a little stage further and look at the dynamics. They may very well come up with something else, like they say, well, that's a scale 5-finger position that goes upwards. These are the sorts of observations we hope they would make. And then you could take that and say, can you see any other 5-finger positions that go upwards? Do all the 5-finger positions go upwards, or do some go down? Do some go halfway up? Do you see what I'm saying? So we're hopefully engaging their analytical faculties here so that they can come up with design features, shapes, texture. They can see, oh, the music seems to change texture there, there's no longer so many fast notes. Get as much of that organised away from the piano prior to learning. Also, and I think this is really important, some background research on the piece. I had a diploma student come to me with the Mozart A minor sonata the other day, and her first question was about the pedalling. Or what do I do about the pedalling at the beginning of the sonata? That sonata there. And I thought, okay, I asked her, do you know what were the circumstances that led to the composition of this piece? And she said, oh no. And thereby missing a hugely important chunk of information. Mozart wrote this piece when his mother suddenly died on a trip to Paris. He was alone with his mother and his sister, and the mother died unexpectedly, and he had to deal with this as a young man. He had to deal with this on a practical level and then on an emotional level. What must that have been like for him? We can't imagine, can we? How did he handle it? Well, he wrote a piano sonata in which we feel anguish and grief and agony, actually, all the way through the sonata. So unless you've got that backstory, you're not going to be able to bring the same meaning, the depth of meaning that the music requires. So this all happens before you even begin to learn the piece. Let's look a little bit more at analysis, just really quickly, how we might analyse. Now I've got here the subject from the F major invention of Bach, which we're all familiar with. So if I wanted to do a textbook analysis of that, I'd have to start by naming the key, F major. I'd have to say it's in 3/4 time, and it begins with a rest. And then beyond that, I would notice that I've got a range between low F and high F, and then back down again. It's known as the Tessitura, or the range. The way Bach gets up from the low F to the high F is by ever increasing jumps. So here we go from the tonic to the mediant, back to the tonic, to the dominant, back to the tonic, and now an octave jump to the high tonic. And then the way he gets down from the high note to the low note is a series of 3 scalar figures. It's not a descending scale, but it has kinks. Down 4 notes, up 1, down 4 notes, up 1, and so on. So that would be a kind of textbook analysis of the subject. But how about a child who probably wouldn't really get into that kind of verbiage, wouldn't have so much resonance to them? How about this? Mr. Bach is celebrating a birthday, and he's got his balloon on the top shelf there, and he wants to get his balloon. So he starts and he jumps, but he doesn't quite manage to get high enough, so he comes back down again. Tries again. This time he gets a little higher. He's almost at his balloon shelf, but he didn't quite make it. He gets to his top shelf, but the only problem is he bursts the balloon. In the process of grabbing it, he bursts it, and the balloon comes down to earth, like balloons do come down to earth, in a kind of spiral. So that would be an imaginative way of engaging the analytical faculties. Now that term in itself sounds very scary, doesn't it? Analytical faculties. But we need to be able to understand the shapes that the music makes, and then the form of the piece, in order to really get the whole story. It's going to make it so much easier to learn, and it's going to make it stick much better. So any kind of analysis that you can do with your pupil if you're a teacher, or for yourself if you are if you don't have a teacher, is good.